Close your eyes and imagine for a moment that you're standing in the center of the Pantheon in Rome. You look up at the oculus, the massive circular opening in the ceiling, and watch a single beam of sunlight cut through the air, illuminating a floor that has been trodden upon for nearly 2,000 years. The air is cool, heavy with the scent of damp stone and the weight of 20 centuries. The walls around you are 20 feet thick, made of a Roman concrete so durable it has survived earthquakes, fires, and the literal collapse of the empire that birthed it. When the builders laid the final stone in the 2nd century, they weren't thinking about a 10-year return on investment. They were building for the gods, which meant they were building for eternity. Now, open your eyes and look at the luxury apartment complex that just went up on the corner of your street. It's a boxy, colorful structure, likely what architects call a 5/1, wrapped in a thin skin of plastic siding, synthetic stucco, and brick tiles that are barely half an inch thick. If you were to walk into one of those units and punch the wall, your hand would go straight through the drywall and into a cavity filled with wood chips and glue. This building wasn't built for the gods, and it certainly wasn't built for your grandchildren. In fact, it was likely designed to be structurally obsolete or even demolished by the time its 30-year mortgage is paid off. This is the great unspoken tragedy of the modern world. We are living in the wealthiest, most technologically advanced era in human history. We can split the atom, we can send rovers to Mars, and we have 3D printers that can squeeze out a concrete house in 48 hours. Yet, we are the first civilization in the history of humanity that has effectively stopped building for the future. We have moved away from being a society of cathedral builders and have become a society of landfill architects. We are surrounded by what I call the architecture of transience, a world built to expire, built to be replaced, and built to be forgotten. The question we have to ask ourselves today is, how did this happen? How did the most powerful economy on earth decide that permanence was a waste of money? To find the answer, we have to look past the scaffolding and the blueprints and stare directly into the hidden logic that governs our lives, the logic of the spreadsheet. Before the middle of the 20th century, a building was considered a permanent addition to the landscape. If you were a factory worker in Baltimore or a merchant in London in 1900, your house was made of solid, structural masonry. The brick didn't just look like brick, it was the house. It carried the weight of the roof directly into the earth. These buildings were slow to build and required skilled labor, masons who spent years learning the geometry of an arch. But because they were slow and expensive, they were also cherished. They were assets that would be passed down through 5 generations. But after World War II, everything changed. Millions of soldiers returned home, creating a housing crisis of unprecedented scale. The demand for shelter was an emergency, and in an emergency, you don't build cathedrals, you build boxes. This was the moment men like William Levitt applied Henry Ford's assembly line to the American landscape. They realized that if you stripped away the thick walls, the ornate carvings, and the structural permanence, you could build a house in a matter of days. They traded the mason for the carpenter and the stone for lumber. But what started as a temporary solution to a post-war crisis slowly hardened into a permanent economic philosophy. We discovered that speed was more profitable than quality. In the modern real estate market, a building is no longer a place where people live. It is a financial instrument designed to generate a yield. If you are a developer today, your goal is to build a structure as cheaply as possible, fill it with tenants as quickly as possible, and sell the entire project to a massive investment fund within 7 to 10 years. In that mathematical equation, permanence is actually a liability. Why would a developer spend 3 times more on a limestone facade that lasts 200 years when they only plan to own the building for 10? From the perspective of a spreadsheet, every dollar spent on longevity is a dollar taken away from the profit margin. We have incentivized disposability. Even our tax codes reflect this. In the United States, the IRS allows property owners to depreciate a commercial building over exactly 27.5 or 39 years. The government is effectively telling investors that after 30 years, the building is worth 0. When the law and the banks both agree that a building is temporary, the architecture follows suit. This shift has given rise to a world of veneer architecture. Look closely at the buildings in any modern suburb. That stone on the front of the supermarket is actually a thin slice of rock glued to a piece of foam. That wood on the floor of the luxury condo is a photographic print on top of a plastic composite. We have become masters of the costume building, structures that wear the mask of permanence but possess none of its soul. In the past, a building aged gracefully. A stone cathedral or a brick row house develops a patina. It weathers the rain and the wind and actually becomes more beautiful as the decades pass. But modern materials don't age, they only fail. Plastic fades and cracks, glue dissolves, synthetic stucco traps moisture and rots the wooden studs behind it. When a modern building starts to look old, it doesn't look historic, it looks like trash. And because it looks like trash, we have no emotional incentive to save it. We blow it up and start over, sending tons of construction debris into landfills, only to repeat the cycle with another 30-year building. But the cost of this transience isn't just environmental or economic, it is deeply psychological. Human beings have a biological need for continuity. We need to feel that we belong to a story that started before we were born and will continue after we are gone. This is why we feel a sense of awe when we walk through the streets of Florence or Kyoto. Those environments provide a sense of deep time. They remind us that we are part of a stable, enduring community. Conversely, when we live in disposable environments where the grocery store is a windowless metal box and the houses are made of glorified cardboard, it creates a sense of profound anxiety. It's what psychologists call environmental anomie. If our physical world is temporary, we begin to feel that our culture, our values, and even our relationships are temporary too. It encourages short-term thinking. Why worry about the climate in 50 years if the very house you are sitting in won't even be standing then? We are building a world that mirror our scroll and discard digital habits, turning our physical reality into a high-definition version of a disposable Instagram story. Think about our public institutions. A century ago, when a city built a post office, a courthouse, or a train station, they treated it as a civic monument. They used the finest materials, granite, marble, bronze, because they wanted to communicate to the citizens that their government was stable and that their education or their justice system mattered. They were cathedrals of learning and palaces of the people. Today, we build schools that look like minimum security prisons and post offices that look like shipping containers. We tell ourselves this is about saving taxpayer money, but it's actually a declaration of low expectations. By building cheap, ugly, temporary public spaces, we are telling our children that their education is a logistics problem to be solved, not a sacred journey. We have traded the dignity of the citizen for the efficiency of the consumer. The irony is that this efficiency is a lie. We think we are saving money by building cheap, but we are actually creating a massive maintenance debt for the future. A stone bridge might cost 5 times more than a steel and concrete bridge, but if the stone bridge lasts 500 years and the concrete one needs to be replaced every 40, the stone bridge is infinitely cheaper in the long run. We have simply become too impatient to do the math correctly. We have forgotten the wisdom of the long now. We are like a man who buys a new pair of cheap boots every 6 months because he can't afford the one pair of high-quality boots that would last him 20 years. Except in this case, we can afford it. We just choose not to because we've been conditioned to prioritize the now over the forever. Every time we build a structure, we are making a statement about what we believe the future holds. When the builders of the Middle Ages broke ground on a cathedral, they were making a bet that their civilization would still be there in 5 centuries to hear the bells ring. They had a profound faith in the future. Our modern architecture, by contrast, is a symptom of a civilization that has lost its faith in tomorrow. We build for the next quarter, the next fiscal year, the next tenant. We are squatting in the present, using up resources to create temporary shelters that offer no legacy to those who come after us. We have become a culture of tenants rather than a culture of stewards. But it doesn't have to be this way. There is a growing movement of architects, urbanists, and citizens who are pushing back against the disposable world. They are advocating for new urbanism, for traditional building crafts, and for laws that incentivize durability over depreciation. They recognize that the most green building is the one that never has to be torn down. They understand that beauty isn't a luxury, it's a biological necessity. Because the truth is, we only protect what we love. If we build ugly, cheap buildings, no one will love them and no one will fight to save them. But if we build with stone, with light, and with a sense of craft, we create places that people will cherish for centuries. The next time you walk through your city, look at the buildings not just as piles of material, but as a mirror of our collective soul. Look at the old stone library and feel the strength of the people who wanted you to have a place to read. Then look at the fast architecture apartment block across the street and see the reflection of a society that is in a hurry to nowhere. We have the technology to build a new world of wonders. We have the wealth to make every school a palace and every home a fortress of permanence. All we lack is the will to look past the spreadsheet. We need to stop being architecture vultures who pick at the carcass of the present and start being cathedral builders once again. We need to start building things that are worth saving. Because a society that doesn't build for the future is a society that doesn't believe it has one. And the ghosts of our grandchildren are watching, waiting to see if we will leave them a legacy of stone or a mountain of plastic and regret. In the end, the question isn't whether we can build for the ages. The question is whether we think the future is worth the investment. When you choose to build with permanence, you're making an act of love for people you will never meet. You're saying, I was here and I cared enough about you to build something that would last. That is the true meaning of architecture. It is the conversation that one generation has with the next. And right now, we are being very, very quiet. It's time we started speaking in stone again. It's time we remembered that beauty, once built, is the only thing that truly lasts. Next time you see a new construction site, ask yourself, will this still be here in 100 years? If the answer is no, then we aren't building a world. We're just renting space in a dying one. It's time to build for the long now. It's time to build for the ages.